All yours.
All right. Hello, Beady friends. Thank you so very much for joining me for our class today. I am Meredith Roddy from Beadalon and Artistic Wire, and class today is going to be learning how to crochet with wire. So hopefully you signed up for the right class and you're here for the right reasons. And if not, maybe you'll learn something new and unexpected. If you are joining me live, welcome. In the chat, I would love to know if this is your first class that you have taken with me, or if you have been here for lots and lots of times. And I also would love to know if you have tried crocheting with wire before. I know I'm asking a lot of information, but I'm trying to read the room and figure out who is here and who my students are today. If you are catching me on the replay, which will be posted in about 24 to 48 hours, welcome there as well. The instructions should be in a link below on the YouTube video on the Michaels Community Classroom. So today we are going to be doing wire crochet, and I see a lot of very familiar names who are zooming by. And of course, I asked too many questions at once, and the comments are going by really, really fast. But that's wonderful. It's good to have a good group in here. So Yvette from Beadalon is over in the chat room. So she'll be posting instructions and also answering any questions. So if there's something that I've done that I've gone a little bit too fast or wasn't quite clear, go ahead and do a little check-in over in the chat and let her know. And if it's something she needs to interrupt me for, she'll do that. And if not, she's usually pretty good at answering the questions as well. So definitely check in that chat for the answers that are coming in. Let's see, I think that is all of the housekeeping that I have right at the get-go. I think it's time we're just going to dive right in and talk about all of the materials that we need for class. We're going to get going, and this is going to be kind of half make along, jump to the end, and then probably finish up on your own kind of class. We have many classes from Beadalon that are archived on the Michaels Community Classroom channel. And as always, if you make this project today or any of the other projects, please post it on your socials and hashtag make it with Beadalon and hashtag make it with Michaels, so we can see what you're making. Also, I love nothing more than seeing pop up on my Facebook or my Instagram feed something that somebody has made from one of my classes. So I think it's time to take that overhead camera and talk about what we are going to be using today for our project. And honestly, 2 tools, actually, to be fair, 3 tools are all we're going to need for class today. Of course, we're going to need some wire cutters, which are a staple in everybody's beading toolbox. Again, a pair of chain nose pliers. We will need a pair of either round nose pliers or stepped bail making pliers as well. And the most important thing that we're going to need today is a crochet hook. Now, this is a size H 5mm crochet hook. It seems to be the one when I'm crocheting with yarn that most of my patterns call for. So I happen to have a lot of them in my crochet hook stash. Who among us are multifaceted crafters? And I love this project because it combines my love of crochet with my love of working with wire. So you do not have to use this size H. It's the H8 5mm crochet hook. If you have a bigger crochet hook, totally fine. If you have a smaller crochet hook, will also work. I've done this technique with as small as gosh, I'm blanking on the exact sizes, but like little teeny tiny ones, and even really large crochet hooks. And all that hook size is really going to do will be to affect the chain size between your stitches, much like when you are doing regular crochet, right? It affects it a lot less though. So if you are a seasoned crocheter, you know that tension and hook size and yarn size really affect the finished project, there's a lot more wiggle room for a lot more wiggle room for this technique. So again, if you want a very specific chain link size, it's going to be a lot harder to achieve than if you are willing to be a little more loosey-goosey. Which might be the theme of the day, loosey-goosey. This is a great stash busting project. So you can see over here, I have just a big old bead soup of beads. And I have already done my first 2 chains, my first 2 lengths of chain. And we're going to do the 3rd one together. So just bead soup, anything that you have. If you have a little jar that you put all of the beads that you find on the floor in your beading studio, that would be perfect. If you have leftover beads from a whole bunch of different projects, that's what this is from. It's just leftover beads from other things that I've made. I liked the colorway. There are a couple of outliers in here, but I think that really that adds to the flavor of the project. I used all different kinds of wooden beads, but you could do this with crystals. You could do this with gemstones. You could do this with seed beads for my friends at John Bead. I see that Danielle is here joining us today. You could do this with, gosh, really almost anything you can grab in those chain stitches. And I also think that crochet is a little bit of a misnomer for this technique. Some people do a true single crochet stitch. I think, to my eye, I actually like it much, much better doing just a chain stitch, which I think is, I mean, it is crochet, so we can call it wire crochet. But don't get held up with having to know crochet to be able to do this technique. And we can talk a little bit about why that's important and why that matters once we start talking about the wire, which is a perfect transition to talking about what wire we're going to be using today. So I am using 26 gauge artistic wire. This is the silver plated artistic wire that is, of course, available in Michaels. And I see that Yvette, thank you very much, is posting the links to the products that I am using over on the side. And I'm working from the spool. And you can see that these dispenser packs are great because there's a little hole in the back. And when you get your wire, all you need to do is just punch that little hole out, thread your wire through, and then you have a little wire cozy so that the wire doesn't unravel or unspool. It keeps it nice and clean. I try to remember to leave my my spools in the packaging, but oftentimes I get really excited about a project and I just rip it all apart, which is fine. But in this case, it's actually very, very helpful to have that wire in the spool. So the reason why I'm using 26 gauge and the reason why I'm using artistic wire is because of how I am working with the wire. So not only do I want a nice, delicate design, but what happens when you are working with wire and working it over and over again is something called work hardening. And if for those of you seasoned wire workers who are watching and participating in the chat right now, I know that you know what work hardening is and why it's important. But what will end up happening as we're working this wire over and over again is it will become brittle. First it will become hard to use, then it will become brittle, and then it will break. So using, say, a 20 gauge wire or 26 gauge wire, a 20 gauge wire, 22 gauge wire, 18 gauge wire, not only is that going to be really hard on your hands, but it's not going to move smoothly with the crochet hook. And eventually it's going to work harden so much that you won't even be able to use it. And that is also why I'm using artistic wire rather than German style wire. So I have a German style wire package out next to me, but that's what happens when I clean up my studio. I clean up the packages and they go away from me. Artistic wire is a dead soft wire. So that means that it starts off, the molecules are nice and far apart. They are nice and soft, and it's a really malleable, bendable wire to work with. If I were using German style wire, which is another type of wire that we carry, that Beadalon has in Michael's, it already starts from a more of a half hard temper, which means it's going to be harder to work with. What else did I want to say about that? Oh, and just for future reference, we do have an upcoming class in the Michael's Community Classroom where I'm going to go over all of the different wire gauges that are available in Michael's from, I believe it's either 10 or 12 gauge. I think it's 12 gauge up to 26 gauge and beyond. And I'm going to be talking about all of the different ways to use that wire and what you would, if you wanted to make a specific thing, what gauge you would pick and why. So just file that back in the back of your head to look for in the future. I can't remember if it's posted yet or it'll be posted soon, but I'm very, very excited about that class. It's going to be a wealth of wire knowledge. So feel free to bring your questions because I know that a lot of people are curious about what you use, which wire to use for what. All right, so let me just get everything organized a little bit here on my work surface, and we are going to get down to business. Oh, you'll also need, of course, a clasp of some sort. I'm just using a very simple hook and eye clasp. Anything will do, will work for this. You could even make your own hook and eye clasp out of heavier duty wire. So first things first, what I recommend is pre-stringing all of your beads. So I recommend stringing at least 30 inches of beads. If you want a more crochet part of your necklace, you're going to string up more beads. I don't really recommend stringing up any less beads because it's always better to have more, and it is a lot harder to add beads on this end than it would be just to string them on up. I did this morning when I was on a different Zoom call. So it's one of those mindless things, and I have no pattern. All I did is I used my Bead Soup mix here and I just put them on. And if I thought that I had done too many of one shape in a row, I changed it up. But really, I really didn't even think about what I was putting on. And see how I mentioned I have a couple little outliers in there. But I think that that's going to add a lot of character to this whole design. So after you have your 30 inches of beads strung up, you want to leave about a 6-inch tail. Whenever I do any measuring, unless I'm in class, I very rarely will measure specifically. 6 inches is plenty. It's more than enough to start off your design. Now that we are ready for class, I'm just going to bring this down just a little bit, and then we have the fun game of, will Meredith hit the camera or will she not hit the camera? Let's try for not. It's set up a little bit differently today, so I have a little bit more room to move and to work. So I say in the instructions to attach the wire to the crochet hook by twisting it like a helicopter. That's the best way that I could describe what I'm going to do, which is to fold the wire in half and twist my crochet hook around like a helicopter. 2 times, 3 times, doesn't really matter. All we're doing is making a loop. So you could even make a loop by hand. I just happen to do it with the crochet hook, and we're going to be starting from the place that has no beads. So we'll have our tail here of about 6 inches. Mine's a little bit longer, but it's always better to have a little bit more wire than a little bit less. And then all of my beads are coming all the way down here and being attached to my wire spool down here. So I'll be working from no beads down to the wire spool. And I like to start by just making one chain stitch. So those of you who crochet, and I'm also a crocheter, will naturally want to hold the wire in your hand the way that you would with yarn. At least that's how I feel about it. And I know that there are a lot of different ways that we hold our yarn when we're crocheting. So again, this is a really loosey-goosey, it should not be a stressful technique nor a precise technique. So however you want to hold your thread, or however you want to hold your wire, really can be the exact same way that you're comfortable holding your yarn. And this is how I do it. So chain stitch is all we're doing to start off. So to do that, just if you're a crocheter, think of it as a yarn over, right? So I just wound, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to wind my wire around my crochet hook, and then I'm going to use that hook to pull that loop through the other loop. Okay. And now we can end class, because that's literally all you need to do wire crochet. I'm only a little bit kidding. We're going to do it a couple more times. Okay. So if it helps to think about pulling loops through loops, and that's kind of how I was able to think about it when I was learning to crochet. And that's what I like to do in my classes as well. Kind of talk about maybe different ways of thinking about it until, and hopefully one of those ways clicks for everybody. Okay, so now what I've done is I've moved my first bead down. And if I do make sure that the bead that I'm starting with is a bead that I want to have on the end, because what I'm doing is I'm creating the end here. Okay, so I'm creating one end of my crocheted wire portion. And I generally don't want a great big bead at the end there. Does it really matter? I don't know. It's just kind of personal preference. Whenever I'm doing any designing, I always like starting and ending with a smaller bead. To my eye, I think that looks better. To your eye, you might like a different aesthetic. All right, so now I'm ready for my next chain. And for this one, I'm going to bring a bead down, and nothing special. It's just hanging out. I'm not making sure that this loop here is any specific size. This is really a fast and easy, loose kind of design. So once again, I'm going to do that yarn over. I'm going to make sure that bead, then you can see that bead is trying to get out of there, right? It's trying to escape, but I'm not going to let it escape. I'm going to lock it down and pull that loop through the loop. So that's our theme, pulling the loop through the loop. And as some beading techniques are, it's actually a lot easier when you go faster than it is when you go as slow as I am going right now. And we'll bring this up to speed kind of in the middle of this length, and then we'll slow it back down again. Now, depending on what my design is, sometimes I do another chain without a bead here. This design, however, I did a bead in each chain stitch. So I'm going to move my next bead down, and you can see that I just pulled it and kind of let it drop and fall into place. And again, it's for some reason, the beads always want to escape. Sometimes, like when you're doing like peyote stitch or herringbone or brick stitch, the bead often will wants to go where you're putting it. But for some reason, sometimes, especially if you're not going fast enough, the beads do not want to go. So we're gonna make them go. And you can see that I varied my sizes as well. So I've got different shapes. I've got different sizes. This one's a little 4mm one, but the technique is exactly the same. So each time I move the bead into place, I yarn over and I pull it through. I'm going to do a couple up to speed just so that you can see, because we are going to make this one loop about 15 inches. And let me make sure that, and all I'm doing, I'm just going to bump this up so you can see what's going on over here on this side as well. So almost every time, because you can see my beads are up against the spool right now, and I'm okay with that. I think that it makes it, it kind of keeps everything together. But if you don't like the feel of that, that's okay. Just go ahead and take it out from the package. I like not having as much wire out here. It just helps me, especially move the beads into place. But if that works better for you, definitely try it. Because again, I can't stress enough, what works for one beader, what works for one instructor might not work for the next one. All right, so I'm going to take this again up to speed, because we've got a bunch to do. And you can see how doing a true single crochet stitch would be a little would be a little harder on your hands than this stitch. So I'm seeing a couple of really good questions come through on the chat for our live class, and I'm going to address them as we're doing this. So I'm using 26 gauge wire. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there are a couple of reasons why I'm using 26 gauge wire, and I'm using 26 gauge artistic wire, which is by design, because artistic wire is a dead soft copper core, silver plated wire that has a tarnish resistant coating on top of it. So all of those characteristics mean that the wire is the right wire for the job. So an 18 gauge wire, for example, would probably not be the right wire for the job. Now I did something a little bit different here, and I just want to point that out, that I'm putting 2 beads into this stitch, and you can put as many beads or as few beads into each stitch as you'd like. So if I were doing this with, say, size 6 seed beads from my friends at John Bead, I might put in, I don't know, maybe 5 per stitch, because it will be a lot easier to do that stitch with more beads in there. But I don't know, sometimes I like having more than one bead in there. And with these rings, these kind of cool multicolor rings, I thought that would be a really fun thing. And I'm making these decisions on the fly. There was a little bit of pre-preparation when I'd strung these up. I'm looking to see, I don't think I have one in this strand, but I did actually plan a couple of multi-bead, I don't know what the right word is, but to have more than one bead in a stitch. I love during class when all of a sudden my brain's like, no, we're not going to come up with the right words. You're on your own on this one. Another really good question that came in is, do you try to keep the wire stitches uniform? And as you can see, because I've done this more than once, my stitches are pretty uniform, but it really doesn't matter, because of it really doesn't matter in the final analysis after you see what we do to finish this necklace off. Becoming constrained by making sure your stitches are all the same is going to make your project not nearly as much fun or as fluid as it should be. So for this, I'm going to go with no. Do not make don't concentrate on making your stitches the same length. They will do what they want to do, and that is okay. So the way that I control my wire so that it doesn't go all over the place, and I think if I back this up a little bit, you can see a little bit more of my technique. So I have my wire here, and I have it with my pointer finger looped underneath it. So I have my beads, I have my wire spool, and my pointer finger is coming, and that wire is around that pointer finger, and then it's coming down here across my hand. So again, this is how it's comfortable for me. I would definitely recommend trying different ways of holding this wire. Maybe putting it behind that pinky here. Maybe that will help tame that wire a little bit. Maybe going through all of your fingers like this, that might help tame your wire. One of the crucial things though, I think, is not having a whole lot of wire out, because the more wire you have pulled out of that spool, the crazier it's going to be, the more it's going to want to dance around your workspace. And you really want your wire to stay under your control, right? The wire is not in charge. You are the boss of the wire. So let me slow this down just a couple more times. And again, I have that wire just looped over my first finger, my pointer finger, and then off to the left. I don't think I would want it off to the right because it's going to get tangled in my design. And just once again, to remind everyone, I am using a size 8 5mm crochet hook. And this is from my crochet stash, from my yarn stash. I have steel hooks that I sometimes use for wire, but I don't have a dedicated tool for this. I mean, there are specific wire crochet hooks, but I haven't seen one that is not exactly the same as any other. And what we're going to do with those 2 large hole beads for the gun jumper, Lexi Ray, we're gonna use those when we do our finishing technique, because we are only making, this is only one of 3 strands that we are going to be twisting together. I have already made the first 2 strands, so don't worry about that. And again, I am using just a whole bead mix of all different sizes. So my smallest is a 4mm. My largest is, I don't know, let's see, this one is 10mm, this barrel bead right here. I have a disc bead. Again, this is like Stash Buster bead soup mix, leftover beads from all of your beading projects. A great way to use onesies and twosies that you have. And you'll be surprised, you would be surprised at how well different beads that you might not think would go together, how they actually do. So I definitely encourage trying different textures, different sizes, different finishes, different everything. I mean, I have got some shiny beads in here. I have matte beads in here. I have wood beads in here. I have these really funky barrel shaped beads, flat and round and all different sizes. And literally all I did is I put them all together. I took out anything that I thought would be really just wouldn't go. And then I just started stringing them up when I was on a call, and kind of let whatever the next bead was coming next up. I had that and I strung it up. Okay, so now I've measured this out, and it is about 15 inches. And really what you want is to measure the first one to be about 15 inches, and then to make sure that the other 2 roughly match it. So one of the challenges with these crochet strands is that they tend to cling on to anything that they get near. So I might have to just do a little bead sweep of my mat here. But so these are the other two, and I want to make sure that they are roughly the same size. So these two are roughly the same size. And then I think I got a little overly zealous on my crocheting over here. Let's see how I did. Yeah, this one's a little bit longer, but it's not too much longer that we're going to have a problem. So I know that I'm done here, and I think that everybody has a good idea of the chain stitch. So now all I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to leave about 6 inches, maybe a little bit more. And I'm going to snip that wire from the spool. Okay. And then just like in regular crochet, I'm going to finish it off. But what I did not remember is I want to do one last chain stitch without a bead. So just to finish it off, sometimes I remember to do it, sometimes I don't. It's not the end of the world whether or not you have that extra chain on the bottom, on the end, but it does make it very easy to see what I'm going to do next, which is I'm going to pull that wire through. So I've snipped it off, and now I'm going to pull that wire through. And those of us who crochet know that that's very important, because otherwise all of your chain stitches have the potential to unravel. In wire, that's not going to happen. And in fact, one of the challenges that you will face in doing this technique with wire is once the wire is crocheted, it's going to stay that way. I mean, it is possible to take any stitches out and straighten the wire out if you have a nylon jaw pliers or a wire straightener, but there's no reason to do that. All right, so I'm just a kind of force of habit here, straightening this wire here on the end, because what we're going to do now is we're going to take that large whole bead and we are going to thread it over all 3 of those wires. Just a nice little way of finishing off the design. You do not have to do that step. And in fact, I think on my example, I didn't. So you can see what it looks like with just all of those, all of the strands brought together in a loop, but we're going to show a different way of doing it also. Because again, this is a very versatile technique and a gazillion different ways that you can finish it off, that you can put your beads together. So I'm just showing one way and one technique. And quite frankly, using 4 strands, using 5 strands, using 12 strands, if that is the kind of patience that you have for the day. The only thing that will do is make your design look even cooler and even more fancy. You can definitely use a bead cone. You could use a bead cap. You could make your own. There are a gazillion different ways of finishing this off. So let's show one with a large hole bead. So I have my loop here on the end because that is where I started. So I'm just going to snip that off, put these 3 wires together. They don't even have to be even. And I'm going to decide, what am I going to decide? I'm going to try this funky bead on the end. It has a nice big hole, and even bigger than the other awesomely big holes that the Michaels beads tend to have. And I'm thinking actually that hole is almost too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another bead. And while I'm doing off camera is I'm just snipping those even, so it makes my threading job a little bit easier. And I'm going to see, it's kind of fun, right? Just a little bit of a different way to finish it off. And now I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers. And if you wanted to use a bail making plier here, that would be fine too. And I'm going to treat all three of these wires as if they were one wire. It's just the technique that I like to use. And so I am going to use that technique. So quick refresher on a wrapped loop for those of you who might not know. And again, there are a couple of different ways of making a wrapped loop, and this is how I like to do mine. And so if you do yours differently, you might want to try it this way and see if you like it. So what I'm doing is I'm holding my round nose pliers flush against the top of that bead. So I have my 3 strands here. So we did one together and I had 2 that were already made. Then I have my 2 large hole beads, and I'm holding it right at the top with my round nose pliers. And I'm just going to use my thumb, one of my best tools, and I'm going to bend those wires out at a 45 degree-ish angle. And again, I'm treating all 3 of those wires like they're one wire. So I have my my round nose pliers. I have them horizontal or parallel, I should say, horizontal and parallel to my workspace. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate them. So now they are perpendicular or up and down to my workspace. I'm going to take my index finger and I'm just going to pull all 3 of those wires over the top of my round nose pliers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to release the pliers. So the wires were over the top of the pliers. I'm going to release them and put them over the bottom of the pliers. And again, I know that there are a couple of different ways to do this, but this is the way that I find works best for me. And now what I'm going to do, I have it in my right hand because I'm right-handed. I'm going to actually switch those pliers over to my left hand and hold them perpendicular up and down again to my workspace. And I'm going to, with my dominant hand, pull those 3 wires around so it's at a 90-degree angle. And I have a bunch of space here. I have space for probably 4 or 5 wraps. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hold the loop in my round nose pliers, and I'm going to wrap this around. And once again, this is not a precise design. This isn't wire wrapping like what we did a couple of weeks ago when we were using square and half round wire. So these wire loops, you can get as messy as you want. You can go up and down and all around and really, really artsy it up, or you can do just like I did and wrap it around for function. And now I'm going to come in here with my cutters. I'm going to snip off the tails of the wire. And then you always want to remember, and I feel like I sound sometimes like a broken record when I say this, but anytime you snip off the ends when you're making a loop, you want to come in with your chain nose pliers, that's what these guys are called, and just tuck that end in. Whenever I look at jewelry that has been made either at a store or by an artisan in a market or anywhere, I can always tell the difference between kind of a next level or someone who has really taken time and care with their jewelry if their tails are tucked in. So that's one side. So now we have a couple of decisions to make. I'm going to bop my camera up just a little bit, and you can see my measuring tape right here. This is where I'm kind of always taking off camera and measuring off my my lengths. Okay, so what I like to do here, and you can do this is where you can make a couple choices. We have three lengths here, three strands of crocheted crocheted beads. You could braid this, right? You could do this in a nice braid, make a nice tight design. I like twisting it and kind of smushing it together. I really like the idea of braiding it, but I tend to twist it and smush it together. Now, you can be as tight or as loose with your twist as you want to be. You can hook some of the beads together so that twist will stay. But again, in some designs, I like things that are very precise. I like doing, peyote stitch with seed beads. I like doing very symmetrical, even designs, but sometimes I like to have the creative freedom of not being symmetrical, not being so neat. And really, once this is on your body, it looks so cool and airy and beautiful. And yeah, and like I said, the more strands you have, the more you can build it out to be a really substantial design. You can also go longer or shorter. And you can see here on the end here where I got a little bit overzealous with my crocheting when I was demonstrating. That's the one that that I did a little bit too much. So let's just see, just for fun, what happens to this wire when I back it out. This could be the mistake of my teaching career. But for those of you who might go down this road, I want to show you what happens. So really all I'm doing is I'm going to kind of try to untangle this wire from itself. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it's not going to actually break, but that is something that could happen. So I'm kind of doing a don't do as I'm showing. But just in case you are curious about what happens. So you see how this wire is coming out now? It's been work hardened because it's been through that crochet process. I've gone around and I've worked at it. So it is definitely harder and more brittle than I would like it to be. But for the sake of making a nice design, I need to take these overzealously crocheted beads off. And let's see. And I like showing this because oftentimes when you get to the end of a design, whether it be a crochet design, a seed bead design, a strung design, even a design on stretch cord, sometimes you have to back things out, right? You've thought that you had everything accounted for perfectly, but you misaccounted, or you misestimated. And so oftentimes, just like right then, it's pretty easy, right? Just to back out. You just need to be aware that you need to be careful. And if you tug on that wire too much, it is likely that it will break. So I'm just going to snip off that kind of mauled, ugly end. So my 3 wires are even, and I'm going to mimic my design that I have over here. So I want to pick up that one funky, this is the coolest beads. When I actually saw them on the strand, I thought that it was just that half. And so I was really pleasantly surprised when it came off of the strand, and that they were double. So super cool. So that's a good lesson to me also, to not assume from the beads on a strand that I know what size that they are going to be. Okay. So is that the same one? Sometimes when I'm not paying super attention, I don't do the same one. Okay, perfect. All right, we're good to go. All right. So, and again, you can see like I do this part without even thinking about it, just running my fingers over the wire. And over here is my round nose pliers. So we're going to do those plier steps again. If I wanted to make sure, if I didn't kind of trust my eyeballing it, what I like to do is put a mark on my round nose pliers with a permanent marker. That helps you make sure that your loops are the same size every time. So even now, then when I'm really pretty good at guesstimating the same spot every time, I will often put a mark on my pliers. It just kind of takes the guesswork out of doing it. So I'm just going to do another wrapped loop here. And I got all overconfident that I can move my camera closer. And again, I'm just treating all of these wires as if they were one. and not really worrying about whether or not this is the neatest wire wrap that I've ever made, because this is a messy design. I almost don't want it to be the neatest wire wrap that I've ever made, because then it wouldn't really match, right? When you're thinking of it from a design perspective, you want to make sure that your wire kind of keeps the same spirit as the rest of your design. So here we have our super fun, really beautiful crochet piece that's been twisted together, those 3 separate strands twisted together. And I can just show you really quickly. So if you did 6 strands, you can see how much more robust that would be. But since we're just doing 3 strands today, what we need to do now, of course, is turn it into a necklace, right? We have this really cool piece. And if you wanted to do this as a bracelet too, so pretty, right? Just a really kind of fun, funky, crazy bangle bracelet. You could use the same technique to make earrings, like so many possibilities. But what I thought I would use to string this up on is some of this deerskin lace, because why not? You know, it's another way of creating a design. And I really like the contrast of the lace, or the leather, I should say, with the wood beads and some of the other stuff that's going on in here. Just kind of, I don't know, it just called to me. And so what we're going to do is a really simple, and again, we're keeping this organic, we're keeping it kind of messy. This very simple technique of just taking some wire and folding the ends over to create the necklace part of the necklace. So let's see, we're going to cut 2 pieces about 8 inches long, but this is where you need to figure out how long you want your necklace to be. Do you want it to hang down over your décolletage? Do you want it to be a choker? Do you want it to be adjustable? Do you want it to be, gosh, I don't know. Any length you want it to be is good for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out about 8 inches twice. So two times 8 inches. And I'm going to wonder where, here are my scissors. I love when my tools are literally right next to me and I cannot find them. Does that happen to anybody else? I am using, just incidentally, from the just trying to look and see how many yards are on here. This is 15 yards, this spool, and I have gotten now 2 necklaces out of this spool. Excuse me, I forgot my words for a second. I've gotten about 2 necklaces so far from this one spool. I did start it new, and you can see how much is left. So it really depends on how tight you're crocheting, how long your crochet is. But each, I mean, you can see we started with 30 inches of beads, but there's a lot more wire in here in between each of the beads. I can't go on the record saying exactly how much wire any one given design is going to use. My best advice is to start with a new spool and see how much your design takes. Okay, so speaking of wire, I'm going to then need to use, I'm just looking to see if I have a measurement, but I don't, because I did it off of the spool, which I thought I did. Just like to double check and see. So I'm going to take one end of that 8 inches of lace, and I'm going to thread it through that loop. And I don't know, maybe about an inch and a half is really all you need. I wouldn't go any less than an inch, because you need enough to have enough surface area to wrap this around in. But you know, it doesn't have to be precise. And that's one of the things I feel like has been a big theme of many of my classes recently, is is trying to encourage people to think outside of the measurement box. And I'm as guilty as the next person on wanting to do things precisely. But in this kind of crazy pandemic time, one of the things that I've really tried to challenge myself is to think outside of my comfort zone. And my comfort zone is preciseness. And so doing a messy wire wrap, like the one that I'm doing right here, it's a challenge for me. And I would encourage you as well to consider just kind of trying something new. Try to make your wire not go right up against the next one, because here we have an organic, messy, dare I say messy design here. So we don't need our wire up here, our wraps, to be perfect. And all I'm doing literally is I'm just wrapping this around front to back. If you want to do back to front, you can do back to front. Just holding it in between my fingers. And I cut off about 8 inches from the top because I know everyone wants to know exactly how much I cut here. I'm going to go back down the other way because why not, right? And the last thing that I'm going to do, well, 2 last things that I'm going to do. I'm going to give a little tug and make sure that that is nice and tight, or at least not going to come undone. And see this little end here? I want to tuck that little friend in and smush him down. So I'm going to try my very best to tuck him in between those 2 pieces of suede. If I can't get it, I'm not going to sweat it. It would just be nice to not have to worry about that little end. So I'm going to tuck him inside. And then since I have kind of enough up here of what I want, I am going to do the same thing with this end. And I might have to trim that more than once. But again, it's always better to have a little bit more wire than a little bit less. So I'm playing fast and loose here with my finishing up of the wire. And all I'm going to do is this very same technique, just kind of wrapping around and tucking my wire ends in. Sometimes you might have to finagle it a little bit. It might not go in perfectly, but not having pokey wires is very important to me. So I like just kind of hiding them where I can. And if I need to go through and just kind of give this a little smushy smush down, maybe I'll do that. Give it a little tug. Good to go. All right, and we're just going to do that very same thing with our class. So again, gosh, any class you have that is a comfortable class for you to use will work here. I am using these hook and eye clasps because I happen to have them and they worked, and it was a nice solution. So the one thing that I do want to make sure when I'm doing this is that my loops are facing the right way. If they're not, or the same way, I should say. If they're not facing the same way, not the end of the world. But for symmetry's sake, I'm going to do them this way. And again, there are so many different techniques. There's so many different ways I've seen that people have finished this off. And Tracy is suggesting doing a lark's head knot with and finishing it off with macrame. Awesome. I love that idea. And I have made designs with using that technique. Just wasn't what I chose here for this design. No great reason to choose one over the other, except for a design aesthetic. I've seen a lot of people using this kind of closure recently, and I thought, fun, why not? And let's see, Diana's asking, after you've done stringing the beads, do you put a loop both at the end and 6 inches in, or just 6 inches from the end? So let's see, how can I answer that question? So in the very, very beginning, when we were just after I strung on all of the all 30 inches of the beads, what I did was I created a loop on the end just to be able to hold the beads and to make sure that they didn't fall off of my thread. And then what I did is I left from that initial loop that was holding in my beads. I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to hide my tail. There we go. What I did from that initial loop is then I left 6 or so inches of thread so that I had my tail to work with, because that tail ended up becoming this part right here. So you just want to make sure that you have a loop so that your design, or so that your beads, I should say, don't fall off of your wire as you're working. And then you also need about 6 inches before you do your first chain stitch. So hopefully that clears everything up for that as well. I will have posted the written instructions just in case you want to go back for reference. Not only will they be included in the video that Michael's posts in the community classroom in the next couple of days, but I will also have them posted on the Beadalon website. So 2 places that you will be able to find those instructions, no problem. And again, please, when we love seeing what you make, both at Michael's and at Beadalon. So make sure that when you post your creations on your socials, be sure to use the hashtag Make It With Michael's and also the hashtag Make It With Beadalon. We would love also for you to follow Michael's on Instagram if you don't already. And their Instagram, of course, is at Michael's Stores. And don't forget to also check out Beadalon and also Artistic Wire. And then lastly, if you want to follow me, to check in with me and see what I'm up to, I'm at Meredith Joy Designs. And the last thing that I want to mention is, and you can see, let me bring this down just a little bit. This suede is not going through the loop very easily. So I could do 2 things. I'm going to try this as my first solution. I'm going to cut my leather into a point. And let's see if it will go through here. And if not, it will. But if I wanted to, I could also use an additional jump ring to attach it. Did I do that on the other one? No, I just pulled it right through. So a couple different ways to solve that problem. And that actually is a fun thing to consider, is ways to solve beading problems. I don't know if that's a challenge that I'm ready for, but that would be an interesting thing to consider, is a class on solving beading problems. So just for anybody who is curious about how these little dispenser packs work, since mine snuck in on me. I'm going to pull this. And Jasmine, again, my Instagram is Meredith Joy Designs, MEREDITH. And this kind of a free-form sloppy end is not for everybody, and I get that. I am generally a neater end doer myself, but I'm also aware that I like to mirror the style of my necklace all the way through it. So to have kind of a messy or an asymmetrical or not quite as uniform end mirrors and kind of keeps the same style as the rest of the necklace. But if you want something that's a little neater, awesome. There are tons of tutorials out there that also show neater ways of finishing off. And I definitely recommend to do that. So once again, if and when you post your creations, please tag Make It with Michaels, and also tag Beadalon. So that is actually the tag that we see more often, because we once again love seeing what you make. So in a little more than an hour, because I only did that one, the one crochet strand, and I had pre-made the two, you can see that you can come up with a really fun, organic, perhaps different style than you're used to necklace. So let me try this on, and you can see with the measurements that I gave that it's a little longer, a little kind of not quite the right top for wearing this necklace, but not cutting off those 8-inch ends. It hits me right about here. So if I were wearing, oh, I don't know, just a plain shirt that didn't kind of have this ruching here up at the top, I think for me, that would be perfect. But again, that's the wonderful thing about us being able to make our own jewelry, is we can do it any size we want. So I've actually been known to lengthen and shorten jewelry just by whatever the outfit happens to be that I want to wear that day. I want to wear a specific necklace that I think matches perfectly, but it's not quite the right height. So either I shorten it or I lengthen it, right? That's what we learn all of these skills so that we're able to do that. So thank you everybody for all of your kind words in the comments. I think I got to everybody's questions as they were going by. If not, please do reach out to me or Beadalon on social media. Once again, this class will be posted within 24 to 48 hours. And if you are watching on the replay, thank you again for finding us. And be sure to check out all of the other classes that not only Beadalon has posted in the Michaels Community Classroom, but all of the other amazing makers across all different media and all different art forms that I know I personally have learned so much from as well. So Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time are generally the Beadalon classes. We also teach some classes on Saturdays at 2 p.m. where one of our other designers, Sarah Ellis, is wonderfully teaching her wire techniques and beading techniques as well. And I think that is it for me. So again, be safe, be well, and until next time, happy beading.